Is the Haas F1 team broken, and can it be fixed? So, after Günther Steiner did not have his contract renewed and being told by owner Gene Haas during the Christmas break that he wouldn't be back, I decided to take a closer look at this team as we get set for the 2024 Formula One season. I'm former professional racing driver and F1 IndyCar insider Tim Hauraney, and this is Nailing the Apex. So, as all of you will surely know by now, Steiner's contract with Haas was not renewed. So with Steiner now out, their director of engineering, Io Komatsu, now steps up to take the role of team principal. Team owner Gene Haas had this to say on his decision not to renew Steiner's contract. Quote, "It came down to performance. Here, we are in our 8th year over 160 races. We have never had a podium. The last couple of years, we've been 10th or 9th. I'm not sitting here saying it's Günther's fault or anything like that, but it just seems like this was an appropriate time to make a change and try a different direction because it doesn't seem like continuing with what we had is really going to work. I like Günther. He's a really nice person, a really good personality. We had a tough end to the year. I don't understand that. I really don't. Those are good questions to ask Günther. What went wrong? At the end of the day, it's about performance. I have no interest in being 10th anymore." End quote. I mean, I agree with Gene. Investing in F1 teams is not cheap. And if I were doing so for a number of years, I don't think I want to be finishing 10th anymore either. But behind the scenes, Günther may have been getting frustrated with how the team was run from top down. I think Steiner wanted Gene to have more involvement in the F1 team, both financially, meaning putting more of his own, money into it, and more track presence. We hardly ever saw Gene at a lot of these races. And for Günther, the team just wouldn't be as successful as it could be unless they shook things up with it. And for Gene, I think he just disagreed with all of that. Now, what do I mean when I say shake things up? Haas is a team that jumped onto the grid in 2016. Now, it did take a few years for them to get there, but they finally did, and they arrived in 2016, and they did so in a unique way, not really building their chassis in-house, but having Dallara make it, and being supplied with Ferrari engines and some of the mechanical side of the car. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dallara, well, they make a lot of Formula chassis. They make a lot of race cars. I remember one of the series as I used to race in, Dallara made all of the chassis. They made all of the cars that were on the grid. And in F1, you want to make for most of the teams, you want to make your own car. Now, Günther Steiner, he was able to turn it into a partial sort of customer car coming into Formula One, which made this a very unique and creative way of getting an F1 team on the grid when times were really tough in motorsports, financially speaking. To bring a new F1 team online was close to impossible due to the amount of money one would have to put up just to be able to compete in the sport back then. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars here. With this unique setup, the team was able to make it all work back then, and at times could be competitive in the midfield, but there were also financial struggles as well. Bad deals that were done, some deals done just so they could keep their head above water. But this team was that, little engine that could. A great team to cheer for. However, when I say broken off the top, I think this model that was put together for 2016, I believe is now outdated. And here are a few things I think they can do to be better for the foreseeable future. This is a team that behind the scenes is small in numbers, but they work their asses off. The crew, although small, they have some of the best personnel in motorsports working in every department, from PR and comms all the way down to the crew that works on the cars at the racetrack. So the first thing they need to do, Haas employs over 200 people at this, spread across 3 bases, one in the US, one in the UK, you got one in Italy, and just over 200 people. Well, that's not enough. Mercedes has well over 1,000 employees. Red Bull Racing around 1,000 as well. McLaren, Ferrari, well, they're all close to those numbers too. Now, some of Ferrari's staff most recently now work for Haas as well, due to budget constraints. That's one of the reasons why. But for the most part, these top teams are employing close to 1,000 individuals, or even over that, at their headquarters. Now, to be a top team in F1, that's what you need. These teams run their factories 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, creating components, designing, constructing, marketing, engineering, sales, PR and communications, and the list just goes on. The top teams, they keep all of this under one roof as well. Everyone works out of the same factory for the most part, not scattered between 3 different countries, which leads us to the facilities. And that's the second thing that they need to do is infrastructure, improve facilities. What's Haas's infrastructure like? It's like I'd mentioned, it's scattered, more so than any other team on the grid. I've been to the McLaren headquarters, Williams, Aston Martin's new state-of-the-art facilities, and they're all top-notch. And I'm not saying that the Haas operation is not top-notch, but McLaren and Aston Martin in particular, well, it's like I said, it's state-of-the-art. Here's just how important it is to have everything under one roof. Let's use McLaren as an example. So McLaren, for the longest time, they never had a wind tunnel really on site, like a state-of-the-art, the same type of stuff that Mercedes and Ferrari were using. They were shipping a lot of their components all the way out to Cologne, using Toyota's wind tunnel. And think about Formula One as time. That takes time. That takes time to develop the part. It takes time to ship it. It takes time to build it. It takes time to put it into the wind tunnel. It takes time to run it. It takes time to get that information back to the factory. It takes time to get those parts back to the factory so they can analyze. And when these new regulations were coming online, Andreas Seidel kind of, thinking, hey, like it would be very beneficial to us to have a nice big wind tunnel on site that we could utilize 24/7 like the other big teams. And that's going to help us on the racetrack. Now, in 2023, their wind tunnel really didn't come online until late into the summertime. But that's going to help them for 2024 and having access to that wind tunnel whenever they need it, running parts into there, obviously within the legal parameters of how much time they can spend in there because of the regulation. But that being said, having it close to home, having it on site, having something you can just quickly utilize is extremely, extremely important. If you look at Aston Martin, I was talking to Mike Crack about this, and he was telling me for them to have a wind tunnel on site at Aston Martin is a game changer because they're essentially working within the Mercedes wind tunnel. However, they have to work around Mercedes's schedule for when they go in the wind tunnel, whether that be at midnight, whether that be at 2 a.m, 3 a.m. They have to set out a specific block of time, and they have to negotiate with Mercedes to figure out, okay, when are you going in? We're going to go after you. So having your own wind tunnel for them on site means they don't have to worry about scheduling. They can just quickly go and do it, analyze parts, and they literally can walk it right back to the factory instead of boxing everything up, shipping it all out, making sure nothing gets broken. And so that helps them. That helps with that turnover, and it helps save time. Haas's main base is in North America, in Kannapolis, North Carolina, with a smaller factory in Banbury, United Kingdom, which is Marusha's old factory. And that is used to turn the cars around between races when they are within Europe. And they have another small base in Italy operating beside Ferrari. Like I had mentioned above, the way this team was first set up back in 2016, it had a few different hubs. And they had Dallara making their chassis, and they were buying parts from Ferrari. The partnership with Ferrari has grown even more coming into 2022 when the new regulation ticked over. That car had probably more Ferrari DNA in it than probably Dallara. But that being said, now the team, they always have now like someone on Aero. So they have their own people who are running the Aero. But when it comes to the design aspects, they use people from Dallara. But they work closer now with Ferrari, especially as the years have gone on here. I think they had half their people power from Dallara as well over the past few years, helping them with the new regulation and getting things in and figuring it out. And I think, they really lean on Dallara a lot in the winter months to build the race car, but probably not so much in the summertime. I think bigger teams, they have these individuals working in-house all the time, even more so in the summer. I would say, that's that time to get new parts for their car, researching, looking, building for the following season as well. But Dallara still builds the car, but their involvement in other technical parts has since been brought down. And now they leverage the Ferrari relationship a lot more, which is smart. And, all power to them. They should probably be doing that for sure. It's a great idea. But you can't build a team in that framework anymore. Not in this era of F1 with this new regulation, like I keep mentioning, where teams are churning out parts so fast. And now that the regulation is a bit simpler and there is a budget cap, which is very crucial to the team's success now. Teams are able to now turn their cars around in season, i.e. like McLaren did in 2023. I mean, that was an incredible turnaround. Because so much of Mercedes, Aston Martin, Ferrari, Red Bull Racing, and McLaren's components are made in-house, they're able to get those parts into their own wind tunnels, like I'd mentioned, test them, get them to the track, ASAP to try them out in practice. In 2022, Haas's biggest upgrade didn't come until Hungary, which was the last, if I remember correctly, the last race before summer break heading into August. So going from March to the end of July is a really long time. And then I think you saw the team start to drop backwards into the field that season. At the beginning of the season, they were very strong. They were up at the front fighting. I think, Kevin, I believe Magnussen got like a top 6 or a top 5 in the first race of 2022, if memory serves. But, now with the way F1 is, teams need to have their own factories and everything under one roof. I mean, going back to Aston Martin, for instance, once, Lawrence Stroll bought up the team, he saw what that regulation was going to look like for 2022, and he started to make things happen, buying up all kinds of land around the factory to build their state-of-the-art facilities with their own wind tunnel, CFD, simulator, and now they have Honda coming on board in 2026. And since they have all that land, they could potentially use some of that land and maybe try and convince Honda to have a small power unit base on site so the team can quickly build their car around Honda's power unit and make that turnover happen so much faster. That's what I think Haas needs to do, to have everything under one roof. A new factory, a big one that houses everything, building your own components, hire more people to come in and just invest. Speaking of investments, that would be the third thing, financials of it all. They're not quite as bad as F1 used to be. I mean, the cost cap has really helped a lot at containing what teams can spend on their own cars, really protecting them from themselves. And that has turned teams into franchises, which is something that is totally unique for F1. Having now a franchise tag and a cost cap, the teams are now valued way higher than they have ever been. For Haas in 2023, Forbes put their value at $780 million, which is close to the bottom. They're ninth. Williams was valued in 10th, the lowest team, at $725 million, while Ferrari, they led the way at $3.9 billion. That's a decent evaluation for Haas, considering they are the youngest team on the grid. But this evaluation, I think it could be way higher if there was further investment coming from its owners. Now, the team is close to running to the cost cap every year, but the infrastructure, the people power, that's where the investment needs to be made over the foreseeable future. And I'm not sure if Gene wants to do that. And with no real investment, you risk really falling further and further behind. And if you have one really bad season, that can really set you back. It can set you back for years. When we look at just how close, the field is now, this is the closest F1 grid I've ever seen in terms of time, on-track performance. And if you start to drop out of that window, you're done. And if you're not being aggressive with your spending it wisely, getting parts to the car quickly, then you really risk, dropping way out of contention. So let's say if Gene doesn't want to further invest outside of the cost cap of running the cars, then, shake things up. I think selling a stake in the team, something similar to what Alpine did last season, and same with Aston Martin as well, to bring in further investments and use that to build out your own factory, build out a stronger workforce. Not saying that this workforce is not strong. They get a lot of stuff done with very little. It's a really hardworking crew, but by having more crew and better infrastructure, this team could really fly. Or there is the other option. He could sell. He could sell the team. I mean, why not? Andretti is hanging around. I'm sure he's ready to make a full commitment. And I feel Gene could definitely fetch way more than what the team is actually currently valued at. And look, maybe that is something that he may have to consider, this season or next. I mean, comments, quotes that I've read over the past few weeks, it doesn't really seem like he's up to selling, but that could also be a way of driving the value of the team up, right? I mean, this is a business. Formula One is a massive business. So I think if he I think if they can fix those three things, this team would well and truly punch above its weight. I'm former professional racing driver and now F1 IndyCar insider Tim Hauraney. This is Nailing the Apex, a podcast that focuses on F1 and IndyCar. Please hit like, subscribe, write a comment. Check out our YouTube channel where you can view past episodes, including our sit down with Gunther Steiner, which was one of my faves from 2023. I'll be back with more Nailing the Apex as the season gets rolling along and gets ready to launch. Thanks again, everyone, for watching and listening. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk to y'all later.